Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson is a tech entrepreneur who sold his company Braintree to PayPal in 2013 for $800 million. He used the money to start a program called Blueprint, built to reverse his aging. He spends about $2 million a year on it. He is the subject of the 2025 Netflix documentary Don't Die. Johnson hired over 30 doctors. They test his blood, scan his organs, track his body fat, analyze his stool, and monitor his nighttime erections using a device worn on his penis while he sleeps. Every reading feeds into a system that tells Johnson what to eat, when to sleep, and how to move. He wakes at 4:30 a.m. and takes 111 pills before breakfast. The diet is 2,250 calories of mostly blended vegetables, eaten before 11 a.m. He has followed whatever the system tells him for over 6 years. In April 2023, Johnson had his 17-year-old son Talmadge hooked up to a machine to extract his blood plasma. That plasma was injected into Johnson. Johnson then gave his own plasma to his 70-year-old father. After 6 rounds, Johnson tested the results. No benefits found. He stopped doing it. Johnson is 48. He claims his body ages at 0.69 years for every calendar year, meaning for every 12 months that pass, his body only ages about 8 months. His doctors say his fitness matches the top 1.5% of 18-year-olds. He does over 100 treatments at the same time. No one, including his 30 doctors, can tell him which ones are working. Serge Voronov. Serge Voronov was a Russian-born surgeon working in Paris in the 1920s. He believed people aged because their sexual organs wore out, and that grafting young tissue onto old ones could reverse it. He started with animals, then moved to humans. Voronov sliced thin strips from the testicle of a chimpanzee and stitched them directly onto the testicles of an aging man. He charged 10,000 francs per operation. The patients were mostly millionaires. They said they felt sharper, saw better, and that their sex drive came back. He even did the operation on his own brother. By the early 1930s, he had done over 500 of these operations in France alone. To keep up with demand, he set up a chimpanzee breeding farm on the Italian Riviera. Newspapers across Europe covered him. Wealthy men traveled from around the world for the surgery. Novelty ashtrays appeared showing monkeys covering their genitals with the words, "No, Voronov, you won't get me." In one experiment, he put a human ovary inside a female monkey and tried to get the animal pregnant with human sperm. It failed. Researchers later looked at the tissue under a microscope. They found the same thing every time: scar tissue. The chimpanzee cells had been destroyed by the body on contact. They never made any hormones. 500 men had paid to have dead animal parts stitched onto their testicles. Voronov died in 1951 at 85. By then, no one took his work seriously. Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang became the first emperor to unify China in 221 BCE. He took the throne at 13. He built the early Great Wall and created one system of writing and money for the whole country. But he was afraid of dying. He banned the word death. Anyone who said it in front of him could be killed. At the same time, he ordered the construction of a tomb. It took 39 years and 700,000 workers. Inside, rivers were filled with liquid mercury. Around it, 8,000 life-sized clay soldiers stood guard. He sent an alchemist named Xu Fu across the sea with 3,000 young men and women to find a mythical island called Mount Penglai, where a tree of deathlessness supposedly grew. Xu Fu never came back. Neither did anyone he took with him. When the search failed, the emperor turned to his court alchemists. They made him pills from cinnabar, a bright red mineral that contains mercury. Alchemists believed mercury had special powers because it shifted between solid and liquid, which they took as proof that death could be reversed. The emperor took the pills every day for years. Over time, he became paranoid and violent. He stopped appearing in public. He died in 210 BCE at 49. The cause was almost certainly the mercury he had been swallowing to stay alive. Modern soil tests around the tomb still show dangerous levels of mercury over 2,200 years later. Eben Byers. Eben Byers was a wealthy Yale graduate and amateur golf champion. In 1927, he fell from his bunk on a train and hurt his arm. A doctor recommended a product called Radithor. It was distilled water with radium, a radioactive substance dissolved in it. Byers tried it and felt better. Not just his arm. He said he felt younger, sharper, full of energy. He started drinking 3 bottles a day, every day for nearly 3 years. An estimated 1,400 bottles total. He sent cases to his girlfriends. Some went to his racehorses. By 1931, his jaw had started to fall apart. Holes were forming in his skull. His teeth were falling out. All but 6 were gone. The radium had been building up in his bones for years, eating through them from the inside. He died in 1932 at 51. His body was so radioactive that he had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin. When scientists dug him up 33 years later, his bones were still giving off radiation. The Wall Street Journal ran the headline, "The radium water worked fine until his jaw came off." Byers was not alone in the radium craze. During the same period, companies sold radioactive toothpaste, radium suppositories, and a device called the radiondocrinator. It was a small pad laced with radium. designed to be worn inside a jockstrap pressed against the scrotum. It sold for $1,000. Modern testing shows it gives off about 1,000 times the radiation of a radium watch. John Brinkley. John Brinkley was a doctor in Milford, Kansas, whose medical degree came from a fake school. In 1918, a farmer walked into his office complaining that he had lost his sex drive. Brinkley looked out the window at a goat and had an idea. He cut the testicles from the goat and put them into the farmer's scrotum. A year later, the farmer's wife gave birth to a baby boy. They named him Billy. Word spread. Brinkley began doing the operation full-time, telling men it would make them young again. He charged $750 each and treated up to 50 patients a week. Unlike Voronoff, who used thin slices, Brinkley put whole goat testicles directly into the scrotum. He told patients it could cure anything from a dead sex drive to mental illness. He bought 12 Cadillacs and 3 yachts. Then the American Medical Association pulled his license. Brinkley's response was to run for governor of Kansas so he could change the laws that shut him down. He nearly won. When that failed, he built a radio station across the border in Mexico with a signal of 1 million watts, the most powerful in the world at the time. He used it to sell goat testicle surgery to listeners across North and South America. The Kansas Medical Board eventually looked into his patient records. They found 42 death certificates connected to his practice. Brinkley spent his final years buried in lawsuits. He died bankrupt in 1942 at 56. Wiley Brooks. Wiley Brooks is an American man who claims he has not needed food to survive since 1983. He calls his practice breatharianism. The idea is that if you stop eating and learn to take in energy from light and air instead, you can live forever. He started the Breatharian Institute of America and began charging people to learn how. Workshop prices ranged from $100,000 to $1 million. At one point, he listed a package on his website for $50 billion. In the 1980s, Brooks went on television to promote his teachings. He looked healthy, spoke clearly, and told audiences he had gone years without eating solid food. People paid to attend his events. Then he was spotted at a fast food restaurant. Reporters found him at a 7-Eleven buying a Slurpee and a hot dog. On another occasion, he was seen leaving a McDonald's. Brooks did not deny it. He said a McDonald's double quarter pounder with cheese was one of the only foods that could put a person in line with what he called the base frequency of a fifth-dimensional universe. The Diet Coke had to come with it. Brooks said the two together created an energy that let the body go without any other food. At least 5 people have died following breatharian teachings from different leaders around the world. Brooks is still alive. He still runs the Breatharian Institute. His website still lists workshops. The $50 billion package is no longer on it. The Jiajing Emperor. The Jiajing Emperor took the throne of China at 13. He ruled the Ming dynasty for 45 years. For most of that time, he was trying to live forever. He turned to Taoist priests, who told him they could make him immortal. Records from the time say the emperor and his chief advisor gathered 960 teenage girls and locked them inside the palace. The girls were fed nothing but mulberry leaves and rainwater so their menstrual blood could be collected. That blood was mixed with mercury, arsenic, and lead to make a liquid the emperor drank every day. The priests also demanded tens of pounds of gold dust for their rituals. In 1542, 16 palace women tried to strangle him in his sleep using a hemp rope. The knot slipped. He survived after being found unconscious for 8 hours. All 16 were executed by lingqi, a method where the body is cut apart piece by piece while the person is still alive. After the attack, the emperor abandoned the Forbidden City and moved to a private complex of palaces and Taoist temples designed to look like the mythical land of immortals. Court meetings stopped. So did contact with officials. The experiments continued. Officials who spoke against any of it were tortured or killed. The borders weakened. Mongol raiders reached Beijing. Pirates hit the coast. He died in 1567 at 59. The mercury had been building in his body for decades. Diane de Poitiers. Diane de Poitiers was the mistress of King Henry II of France. She was almost 20 years older than him. In a court full of younger women trying to replace her, she held her position for decades. The king signed his letters with both their names. He trusted her over his own wife, Catherine de' Medici. In her 60s, Diane still looked young. A historian who met her 6 months before her death said her skin was white and smooth, and her hair was as fine as silk. She swam in cold water every morning and rode horses daily. Every day, Diane drank a liquid made with gold. Her doctors had told her that because gold never rusts or breaks down, drinking it could stop the body from aging. She did this for years. In 1559, Henry died in a jousting accident. Catherine de' Medici immediately forced Diane out of court. She spent her last 7 years in a castle Henry had given her. She kept drinking the gold. She died in 1566 at 66. In 2009, French scientists examined her remains. They found gold in her hair at 500 times the normal level. Her hair had turned golden from the metal. Her bones had been breaking down from the inside. The scientists said the gold was the most likely cause of her death. The pale white skin that made her famous at court was a sign of gold poisoning. Brown-Séquard. Charles Edouard Brown-Séquard was a 72-year-old scientist in Paris. In 1889, he crushed the testicles of dogs and guinea pigs into a liquid, mixed in blood and semen from the same animals, and injected it into his own body. He did this 10 times over 3 weeks. He believed it would make him young again. He then stood before a room of scientists and told them what happened. His stamina had gone up and his bowel movements improved. His stream of urine, he said, had grown longer and more forceful. He presented it as a major discovery. He gave the formula away for free so any doctor could use it. The room took him seriously. Within months, over 12,000 doctors across Europe began giving the same injections to their patients. In the United States, a baseball pitcher named Pud Galvin took the fluid before a game for the Pittsburgh Alleghenies and threw a shutout, meaning the other team never scored. He became the first athlete in history to take a drug to boost his performance. The drug was crushed dog testicles. Brown-Séquard introduced the idea that testicles held the secret to youth. Voronoff and Brinkley took it further. Scientists later recreated his formula. The amount of testosterone in it was 10,000 times too low to do anything to the human body. Everything Brown-Séquard and those 12,000 doctors saw in their patients was the placebo effect. He died in 1894, 5 years after his announcement. He was 76. Bart Hughes. Bart Hughes was a Dutchman who believed he knew why the brain ages. His theory was that when a baby is born, the skull has soft openings that let blood flow freely to the brain. As the skull hardens and closes during childhood, that blood flow drops. The brain gets less oxygen. It slows down. Aging begins. Hughes decided to open his back up. In 1965, he took a dentist's drill and bored a hole into his own head. He did it at home with no medical help. The whole thing was filmed. He believed the hole would let more blood reach his brain, keeping it in a younger state for the rest of his life. Afterward, he said he felt a permanent high. His thinking was clearer. He spent years trying to get the medical world to take the procedure seriously. They did not. 5 years after Hughes, a British woman named Amanda Fielding did the same thing to herself. She also filmed it. She then ran for a seat in the British Parliament. Twice. Both times, she wanted the government to offer the procedure for free through the public health system. She lost both elections. There is no evidence that drilling into a healthy skull does any good. It leaves a permanent weak spot in the bone that can lead to infection or brain damage. Hughes never stopped believing it worked. He died in 2004 at 70. Bukai. Bukai was a Buddhist monk in northern Japan. In 1903, he completed a ritual that had been banned by the emperor 24 years earlier. It was called Sokushin Butsu. The goal was to turn his body into a preserved object that would never rot. He was the last person to do it. The process took about 3,000 days. For the first 1,000, Bukai ate only nuts, seeds, and berries while exercising to burn off every bit of body fat. During the next 1,000, the diet dropped to tree bark and pine needles. Toward the end, he began drinking tea made from the sap of the urushi tree, which has the same poison found in poison ivy. Over months, it dried out his body from the inside and made his flesh toxic to bugs. In the last stage, Bukai was sealed inside a stone chamber barely bigger than his body, 3 meters underground. He had a small air tube and a bell. Each day, he rang the bell once. The other monks listened. When the bell stopped, the air tube was removed. The tomb stayed sealed for another 1,000 days. When they opened it, his body had dried into a mummy. He had succeeded. The mummy can still be seen. Of about 100 monks who tried this over the centuries, only 16 to 24 made it. X-rays of some who failed found river stones in their stomachs. They had been eating rocks in the dark, underground, still ringing the bell. Alexander Bogdanov. Alexander Bogdanov was a Russian doctor and one of the original Bolsheviks who helped build the Soviet Union alongside Lenin. He also wrote science fiction. In the 1920s, he started to believe that swapping blood between young and old people could reverse aging. He called it physiological collectivism. The idea was that Soviet citizens would share blood the way they shared labor, and nobody would grow old. He tested it on himself. Over several years, he did 11 transfusions using blood from younger people. After each one, he said he felt better. His eyesight got sharper. His hair stopped falling out. Friends told him he looked 10 years younger. In 1926, he opened the Institute for Hematology and Blood Transfusions in Moscow. It was the first place in the world built for blood science. Even Lenin's sister took part in his program. Others lined up to join. Bogdanov believed he had found the answer. In April 1928, he did his 12th transfusion. He swapped blood with a 21-year-old student. The student had malaria and tuberculosis. Nobody knew. The student who got Bogdanov's healthy blood made a full recovery. He lived into the 1980s. Bogdanov got worse quickly. He died 2 weeks later at 54. In his final hours, he refused medical help. Instead, he began writing down his own symptoms as they got worse. His pulse, his temperature, how his skin was changing color. He kept recording until he died.